Samael, or Satan, was in due course of time turned into the devil, the enemy of all things good. Whereas actually the devil in the book of Job is a loyal servant of the court of heaven. It's just his job to do the prosecution. So he proposes that God try Job. Said, you think you've got a virtuous follower in Job, but he's only virtuous so long as he's prosperous. You see what happens when you visit him with suffering, and then see if he's loyal to you. So God does exactly that. And he visits Job with all these plagues. And then the three friends of Job sit around, and they try to rationalize why all this is happening. They say, in effect, you must have committed some sort of secret sin. Otherwise, you wouldn't be suffering. This is the reasoning of the book of Deuteronomy, that if you obey the law of God, you will prosper. And the Hebrews were eternally puzzled as to why this didn't work out. So the book of Job highlights this question. And all the advisors of Job, the three men who have this discussion with him while he's covered with sores and sitting around in some wretched pad with all his property lost and his family in trouble and so on. And he cannot see any sense in their arguments. And finally, God appears at the end, the 28th chapter. And he comes in a whirlwind. And he refutes the advice of all these three friends. Who is this, he says, that darkeneth counsel with words without knowledge? Now stand you up like a man and answer like a man. Were you there when I laid the foundations of the earth? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? And then he goes on to ask Job a series of questions, which include such questions as, why do I send rain on the desert where no man is? Why can you catch the Leviathan with a hook? Can you bind the influences of the Pleiades and make them work for you? Or can you loosen the astrological influences of this constellation of Orion? Can you do all this? And what is it all about? So a series of questions are delivered to Job, none of which have any answer. And the effect of these questions on Job is to solve his problem. And ordinary interpreters of the book of Job always say that this isn't really the answer. They say the book of Job raises the question and doesn't answer the question. It does answer the question. It answers the question by asking questions, all of which seem to reflect that in some curious way, the universe doesn't make sense. Why do you send rain on the desert where no man is? Now, what about that? See, our trouble is that where we really get into difficulty in life is that we expect everything to make sense. And then we get disappointed. We expect, for example, that time is going to solve our problems. That there's going to come a day in the future when we will be finally satisfied. And so things make sense, we say, of something. It is sensible, it is satisfactory, it is good, because we feel it has a future. It's going to get somewhere, and we're going to arrive. Our whole education is programmed with the idea that there is a good time coming when we are going to arrive. We're going to be there. When you're a child, you see, you're not here yet. You're treated as a merely probationary human being. And they get you involved in the system where you go up step by step through the various grades. When you get out of college, you go up step by step through the various grades of business or your profession or whatever it is, always with the thought that the thing is ahead of you. See? It's going to make sense. And perhaps the universe doesn't work that way at all. Maybe instead of that, this world is like music. where the goal of music is certainly not in the future. You don't play a symphony in order to reach the end of the symphony, because then the best orchestra would be the one that played the fastest. You don't dance in order to arrive at a particular place on the floor. And so Chesterton's view of the world is an essentially musical view, a dancing view of the world, in which the object of the creation is not some far-off divine event, which is the goal, but the object of the creation is the kind of musicality of it, the very nonsense of it, as it unfolds. And so, that when you talk sense, your words refer to something else. In other words, if I talk about tables and chairs, these sounds that I'm making, tables, chairs, refer to something in the physical world. The sound table is not the table, but it refers to this. But then when we ask, what does the world mean? What does the table mean? The noise table means this. Now, does this have a meaning? What is the meaning of life? If we ask the question, what is the meaning of life? We are treating life as if it were a set of words, a set of symbols. But it isn't. The real great insight is that these things don't have any meaning. Now, in ordinary way of talking in the West, we would say that's terrible. Something that has no meaning is awful. A meaningless life, you see, that we say about the most dreadful kind of life. But Chesterton is trying to say that the meaningless universe, the nonsense universe, is just great. Just because it doesn't mean anything. It is because God himself is dancing, is playing. He has a poem of God as a child, and he's playing with a windmill. And the fans of the windmill are the four great winds of heaven, and the balls with which he's playing are the sun and moon. And the whole idea, therefore, then, is that existence itself is a magical play, and is therefore nonsense. In the sense, the special sense of nonsense, that it is something going on which does not refer to anything except itself. When we say nonsense, we are saying it for the delight of the words, and not for anything that they mean. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave. All mimsy were the borogroves, and the mumraths outgrabe. Or better, from Edward Lear, who said of himself, he really drew the portrait of Chesterton. His body is perfectly spherical. He weareth a runcible hat. And so there was an old man of Spithead who opened the window and said, Phil Jumble, Phil Jumble, Phil Rumble come tumble, that doubtful old man of Spithead. Pluffskin, pelican, G. We think no bird so happy as we. Pluffskin, pelican, Jill. We think so then, and we thought so still. You see? Now, he says that in this kind of marvelous playing with the voice and with words, you have something nearer to the nature of reality than you do with statements that make formal sense. Even though this man Chesterton was a great believer in reason. And you know, in the Father Brown stories, there is an occasion when Father Brown espies the criminal masquerading as a priest, because the man says, well, we cannot find out God with our reason. All the things of divine are beyond reason, and we must learn to suspend reason. And at that moment, Father Brown knows this man is not a good Catholic, and not really a priest at all. Because St. Thomas, you see, bases everything in saying there is a consistency between reason and faith. And Chesterton believed in that very strongly. But that didn't prevent him from seeing the deeper mystery, that there is a kind of super reason in unreason, but not just pure unreason, but in something that we recognize as nonsense, in the sense that Edward Lear and Lewis Carroll wrote nonsense. Now, this is an enormously important thing to understand. What is the difference, shall we say, between inspired nonsense and mere bosh? And this is what he's trying to point out. There is a kind of nonsense which we could call magical nonsense, and there's a kind of nonsense, on the other hand, which we should call just trivial rubbish. So, it is the nonsense, divine nonsense has this extraordinary humor with it. Which he tries to evoke in saying that it is a great thing to look at a rhinoceros or a hippopotamus, creatures who do exist, and look as if they don't. A poem in which he brings this out is called The Fish. Dark the sea was, but I saw him, one great head with goggle eyes, like a diabolic cherub, flying in those fallen skies. I have heard the horse deniers. I have known the wordy wars. I have seen a man by shouting seek to orphan all the stars. I have seen a fool, half-fashioned, borrow from the heavens a tongue, so to curse them more at leisure. And I trod him not as dung, for I saw that finny goblin hidden in the abyss untrod, and I knew there can be laughter on the secret face of God. Blow the trumpets, crown the sages, bring the age by reason fed. He that sitteth in the heavens, he shall laugh, the prophet said. So he sees in a goldfish, you know those kind of Disney goldfishes which have all sorts of tails and fins and complications with their big goggle eyes. What on earth are they doing? You ever thought about that? You know, what is this going on? I mean, does it have a purpose? Goldfish, you know, they eat and they absorb things in, they make more goldfish, and they go on making goldfish and more goldfish, and we don't even eat them. Maybe something does that we finally eat. But fundamentally, what's the point of a goldfish? A goldfish is a solemn thing which keeps on going round, you know? And it keeps on going round and round and round and round and round. It lives beneath the water, but is very seldom drowned, which is because it keeps on going round and round and round. It isn't going anywhere at all. It's just going as children like to go. Or Phil Jumble, Phil Jumble, Phil Rumble, come tumble, that doubtful old man of Spithead. That's what's happening. And so in very profound theological ideas, it is said, you see, that when we finally go to heaven and we join the choirs of the angels, what are the choirs of angels doing? Well, they're sitting around in heaven, or actually dancing, singing Alleluia, 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 you know? When you sing on Easter, Jesus Christ is risen today, Alleluia. What is this Alleluia? Well, I must assure you it doesn't mean anything. It is a sound of delight, but of no other meaning. It is an expression like, whoopee! Oh, when somebody is riding a surfboard and they're going down that thing, it's just like that, you see? Well, what's the point of that? The point of it is itself. It has no point beyond itself. It's there, it's arrived, it's in a complete present, it is here and now. And that's what it's all about. We say to swing it, get with it. And that is, of course, what all those angels are doing. The beatific vision, that means the word beatus in Latin We translate it blessed, but that's a rather pious word. It really means happy, joyous, beatus. And so all those angels, as Dante describes it in the Paradiso, when he first hears the song of the angels, he says, it sounded as if it were the laughter of the universe. And what? No laughter in church? Well, we are supposed to be a small replica of the beatific vision and of the angels gathered round heaven, represented by the altar, the throne of God. Why associate all this with solemnity? You see, Sunday is a very interesting institution. It's a kind of modification of the Jewish idea that after the 6 days of creation, when God was working, he took a day off. Holy day. That was, as it were, the culmination of the 6 days of work. In Christianity, of course, the Sunday is the first day of the week, and not the seventh day, the Sabbath. But the same idea is involved, that once in every 6 pulses, there is a 7th pulse, which is a little space of time to take off. Now, 6 days of your life, say you're working and you're being responsible and you're earning a living and you're being serious. If you do that all the time, you're going to go quite mad. You're going to be like a bridge, a steel bridge, which is so rigid that it has no swing in it, and therefore it will fall apart in a storm. For in order to be sane, every human being must allow himself a little time in life to be insane, to let go, to stop trying to control everything, to stop trying to be God, and just go in whatever way you want, see? So when you go to church on Sunday, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take off from all this thing of laying it on. But what we've made the mistake when we go to church on Sunday, present company accepted, but most preachers lay it on. So they say, this is what you ought to do. That's what you ought to do. You haven't been conducting this right, and so on and so on. And nobody gets a vacation. Nobody gets a holy day, holiday, a Sabbath, time off. So when you go, the whole idea of church is that this is the place where we can get back to the fundamental sanity of nonsense and sing Alleluia with the angels around the center of the universe, which is actually manifesting these stars, these galaxies. For what? It's a firework display. It's a celebration. You say, today there will be at 11 o'clock on Sunday, or whatever other time it is, a celebration of the Holy Communion. Do you celebrate? Or do you comport yourselves as if you were attending a funeral? I used to be a chaplain in a university, and I used to say, there will be a celebration of the Holy Communion at such and such a time on Sunday. And incidentally, if you come here out of a sense of duty, we don't want you. Better be lying in bed or going swimming or something. Because what this is we are going to have celestial whoopee. And we're going to enjoy it. That's what you're supposed to do. Instead of coming in and saying, you're going to go to this thing and you're going to feel how awful you are, how undutiful you've been, how absolutely terrible you've been. And however can you expect to be anything more than terrible if you don't really enjoy your religion? That's what's going to give you the strength and the power to be something other than terrible. But if you just go in and make your religion an occasion for saying, oh, we've been terrible and we're awful sick and we need help, and here's the Holy Communion, which is your medicine, and I hope it tastes nasty, that's awful. It doesn't get to the center of the thing, you see, which is Chesterton put it in another poem where he said, it's called The Song of the Children. And it says of Jesus that he taught to the adults, he taught them laws and watchwords to preach and struggle and pray. But he taught us, deep in the hayfield, the games that the angels play. Had he stayed here forever, their world would be wise as ours, and kings be cutting capers and priests be picking flowers. Because that's the sense of the thing, fundamentally, that everything that's going on is a sort of jazz. A ba-doo-ja-da, ba-hoo-da-da, ja-doo-ba-da, ja-boo-ba-da-doo-ba-da-doo-ba-da-doo. And everything in the world, the flowers, the trees, the mountains, all going, ka-choo-da-doo, 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 ka-choo-da-doo. And we have piped to you and you have not danced. We have mourned to you and you have not wept. You won't join the game because you human beings think you're so special and so serious, and you've got to make sense of it all. There isn't any sense to it. Just join in, come on. Make ba-choo-da-da, ba-choo-da-da, ba-choo-da-da with the whole thing, and finally you'll be singing Hallelujah with the angels.
I happen to be a lover of archery. But I don't like archery for killing things. I like it as a sport. But what I like most of all is to set an arrow free, like it were a bird. You know, when it gets far up in the sky, whee! You watch it. And it suddenly turns and drops. What is it that fascinates us about that? Because it's not useful. It doesn't really achieve anything that we would call purposive work. It simply is what we call play. But in our culture, we make an extremely rigid division between work and play. You're supposed to work in order to earn enough money to give you sufficient leisure time for something entirely different called having fun or play. Imagine, too, if you were a bus driver. Bus driver is ordinarily considered an absolutely harassed person. He's got to watch out for all the laws, all the competing traffic, the cops, the people coming on board giving their fares, and he has to give them change. And if he has it in his head that this is work, it will be hell. But let's suppose he has a different thing in his head. Supposing he has the idea that moving this enormous conveyance through complicated traffic is a very, very subtle game. And he has the same feeling about it that you might have if you were playing the guitar or dancing. And so he goes through that traffic, avoiding this and avoiding that, and taking a fare like this, and he makes some music of the whole thing. Well, he's not going to be tired out at the end of the day. He's going to be full of energy when he gets through his job. The art of washing dishes is that you only have to wash one at a time. If you're doing it day after day, you have in your mind's eye an enormous stack of filthy dishes which you have washed up in years past, and an enormous stack of filthy dishes which you will wash up in years future. But if you bring in your mind to the state of reality, which is, as I've pointed out to you, only now. This is where we are. There is only now. You only have to wash one dish. It's the only dish you'll ever have to wash, this one. You ignore all the rest, because in reality, there is no past and there is no future. There is just now. So you wash this one. And instead of thinking, have I got it really clean, as my mother taught me with an angry voice, that I had to get every little scrap off it, you know, and she got angry at you. Instead, you turn the cleaning movement into a dance. Like this. And you dig that. And you swing that plate around, and you let the rinsing water go over it, and you put it off in the rack. Crazy. See? Take the next one. And you get this rhythm going. See? And you're not under compulsion all the time. You know, when I was a little boy and went to school in England, I had to learn the piano. They called it playing the piano, but actually they said you must play. We had in England compulsory games. They used to post notices on the bulletin board in the school where I went to, which said, this afternoon everyone will go for a run. And if you didn't go for a run, and it was found out that you hadn't, you were flogged. So everybody hated going for a run because they were under compulsion to play. Everybody must play. It's like the whole game of life we're all involved in. It's only a game, but everybody has got to belong. So we went running. I remember one day I was out on a run, and I was trying to enjoy myself because I was running on the balls of my feet, dancing along. And a fellow came up behind me who was running on his heels. He was jogging. And he was going clump, 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 clump. And I said to him, what's the matter with you? You're running on your heels. And you're jarring your whole body all the way through. Okay, but he stuck to it, and he became the champion long-distance runner of the school. But he didn't enjoy it. It was work. And all he enjoyed was the suffering that he endured that made him feel that he had really contributed to the human race because he suffered so much. He identified his existence and his worth with his suffering. Now, really great runners dance when they run. They don't necessarily follow a straight course. They may weave. And in the same way, if you happen to witness in the year 1970 the World Cup Championship in soccer, you would have seen that the winning team from Brazil played soccer in a most extraordinary way. They played it like basketball. They played it dancing. The way we learned soccer in school when I was a boy was very, very formal and orderly, and we didn't really enjoy it. But these fellows were bouncing balls off their shoulders, off every muscle, and they had astonishing teamwork. But at the same time were dancing the game, and the sports writer in the London Times said that they danced their way to victory. So the point is, therefore, that you can do everything you have to do in this spirit. Don't make a distinction between work and play. Regard everything that you're doing as play, and don't imagine for 1 minute that you've got to be serious about it. Let's take, for example, the rest of the world, other than ourselves. Think for a moment, what are vegetables doing? Let's, for example, consider this. And what's it all about? I mean, it serves us, human beings, by being decorative, but what is it from its own point of view? See, because here is this stalk, and all these leaves come out, ka-ching, 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 all the way to the stalk, then it whoops, it goes into this. And then it goes into flowers in the end, you see, and they go kitty, 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 all around. And I look at the thing, and it's like a symphony. It's just like Bach doing a fugue with all the different movements going. And that's what it's about. What do you say? It's using up air, it's using up energy, it's really not doing anything except being ornamental. And yet here's the whole vegetable world. Not only cactus plants like this, but all trees, roses, tulips, and edible vegetables, cabbages, celery, lettuce. They're all doing this dance. And what is it all about?